Welcome back to Kelsey's Corner. I'm Kelsey. This is Ricky Bobby, one of my mini ball pythons. Today I'm going to be doing a video talking about your first pet snake, or if you're thinking about getting a snake, some things to look for, some things to avoid, some questions to ask, and how to make sure you're getting a healthy reptile before you end up laying down that money and bringing it home. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm Kelsey. I have a dog named Diesel, a quaker parrot named Charlie, 13 ball pythons, and a boa named Phoenix. I made this channel so that I could bring y'all along on my journey. I'm an aspiring ball python breeder, so I want to show y'all my mistakes along the way. Hopefully someone can learn from them, and also my successes, and bring y'all along with me as I continue my journey. So the first thing that you want to look for when you're purchasing a new snake is the conditions that the person you're getting it from has it housed in. A lot of times in pet stores like PetSmart, Petco, whatever your nearest pet store to you is, they will have them in these glass tanks, maybe several in a tank, and it's not a big deal to have more than one in a tank, but they usually don't have the humidity regulated very well. Some signs of the bad humidity in a tank: it's going to look really dry. There should be condensation in the actual enclosure. Another sign is going to be the snakes having some stuck shed, or you can look in the substrate and there will actually be little pieces of shed. A lot of times the snakes in pet stores are emaciated. People in pet stores aren't really trained properly on how to care for the snakes, so a lot of times they're not feeding them enough, or maybe the prey isn't big enough for them, so a lot of times they'll be very, very skinny and underweight. I personally don't recommend buying a reptile from a pet store ever, and you really don't know where they came from. I don't even know where they get them from, so going to a breeder is always the best option. Support your local small business. A lot of these people do it as a hobby, maybe as a side business, but most of them, everyone that I know that runs this as a side business or a hobby, they love their animals. They do it because they love the animals. Another great option to find a local breeder is to go to a reptile expo. They have them going on all over the country all the time. We just had one in Daytona. I live in Florida. We just had one in Daytona last weekend. We had one in Jacksonville this weekend. We have Repticon coming up in October. I think that's still going on. So look up, you can find online when the next reptile expo is closest to you, and if you're really in the market for a snake or a reptile, that's a really great place to find it, because people have to purchase tables. These are either big name breeders or they're small time breeders trying to get a good name for themselves, and a lot of times they have a very good selection of whatever kind of animal you're looking for. The only downside to getting an animal from a reptile expo is if you're a new pet owner and you really don't know that much about them, and you want to get kind of that 101 with the breeder. If you're going to a huge reptile expo like the national one that they just had in Daytona, it is so busy, it's very unlikely that you're going to get that quality one-on-one time with someone working the table. Sometimes they have a lot of people back there and they will be able to do that with you, but if you're looking for that all-inclusive information, the comprehensive instruction manual for whatever animal you're looking for, a big reptile expo like a national one or a statewide one that has a big name, you might not find all the information you're looking for. So with that being said, once you've found the breeder that you want to work with, or you've found a couple of them that you're kind of trying to choose between, ask them some questions about their animals. A good breeder is going to be fairly organized when it comes to their breeding structures. They're going to know a lot about it. Just beware, some people can sound really, really good when they're talking about something and really not know what in the heck they're actually talking about. I really recommend doing a lot of your own research before you even start asking questions, because you're going to find a lot of great information online, and then you can then take that information that you find and then compare it to whatever they say. And that kind of gives you a baseline of what you're looking for, and then maybe they have some more specific information that can help you narrow it down even more with who you want to go with. So a really great question to ask a breeder is about the parents of the animal. For ball pythons specifically, especially if the breeder is into doing different kinds of morphs, they should be very organized and know exactly where that clutch came from. If they seem to have limited information about the parents, I would be very wary of that.
I just want to pause here real quick and say, just because they don't have information on the parents doesn't mean you should discount someone entirely. I just want to make clear, especially if they say that they produce an animal, if they don't have good information on the parents, I would be very careful about that person.
Also keep in mind there's a lot of scammers out there. I hear all the time people say, oh, I put these pictures up on my Instagram of this snake for sale or on Morph Market, and then I got on Facebook today and someone was posing as me under my name with my pictures trying to sell my snake, and it's a scammer and they just take people's money. So that's where these questions really come in handy. If someone isn't willing to talk on the phone with you, someone isn't willing to meet with you, if someone wants a down payment without answering all your questions, run away. Don't even entertain it because it's probably a scammer. It's easy to get scammed if you haven't done it before, because what happens is, especially if you're buying a snake online from someone maybe out of state and they're going to ship it to you, if you want to hold the animal but you can't pay for it all right away, you're going to have to put some money down. And that's why it's so crucial to make sure that you're looking up this breeder, making sure they have good reviews, making sure they're legitimate. If they have a YouTube channel or an Instagram and it's been around for a while, those are really great tools you can use to make sure that this is someone trustworthy and legitimate. There's so many scammers out there, unfortunately. It's rampant. Once you've gotten the answers to the parents of the animal that you're looking for, if that satisfies you and seems to be legitimate, ask them how they sex their snakes. There's two main ways to sex ball pythons. It's popping and probing. There's really no right answer there. It's whatever you prefer. I probe my snakes because I suck at popping. But ask them how they sex their snakes. If it's not one of those two answers, I would be wary of that. They probably haven't actually sexed the snake. Also be wary if they say, oh, I have a friend who does it for me. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but if they're a breeder of reptiles, they should probably be doing that themselves. That exact thing happened to me. The guy said, oh, I have a friend and he sexes all my snakes for me. Told me it was a girl, got home, probed it myself, it was a boy. Lesson learned. Go to someone reputable, make sure that they have their information correct. Asking them how they sex their snakes is important if you're adamant on getting a certain sex of snake. If you don't care, it's really not that big of a deal. Just keep in mind, a lot of times, in my experience, female snakes tend to be, especially when they're young, they tend to be very feisty, bitey. Male snakes, every male snake that I have has been calm from day one. And also keep in mind, this may sound like you're kind of scrutinizing them by asking them so many questions, but a good breeder is going to be happy to answer your questions. They're going to understand that you're going to be spending money with them. You're their customer. They want to make you happy. If they're getting disgruntled at you or frustrated at you, or they sound angry or upset with you for asking a bunch of questions, I wouldn't even bother with that, because that's somebody that is trying to make a quick sale without necessarily doing their due diligence to make sure that their animal is going to a good, well-informed home. Once you're satisfied with the breeder that you've picked, the questions that they've answered for you, and you've picked your animal, these are the next things you want to look for. If you're able to meet in person and see the snake in person before buying it, that's highly recommended. A great place, again, like I said earlier, to do that is a reptile expo. If you're seriously interested, they will pull it out for you and let you look the snake over. Make sure you do a good job looking this snake over, especially if it's someone that you really haven't heard of before. Check their breathing if you're able to. At a reptile expo, it's going to be really loud in there, a lot of people talking. But if it's not too loud, you can put the snake up to your ear just like this, where their nose is, and you can hear if they wheeze or if it sounds like they have an obstruction in their nose or anything like that. It could be a respiratory infection, which requires antibiotics. Make sure that you let them know that that's what you hear. Let them hear it too, because if their animal is sick, then they're going to want to take the proper precautions to make sure that that animal is healthy and ready to sell. When they hand you the snake may be really shy and may stay bundled up in a ball, or it may be kind of curious like Ricky is here. If they're curious, that's a great thing, because you can really look them over, turn them around, look at their belly. They may get freaked out by sudden movements. I have some of my snakes that don't like having anything towards their face at all. He is generally okay. He's not super head shy. Check their skin, check their scales. They should be uniform. They should be laying flat. Ricky is a banana ball python, so he does have black spots. I don't know if it's focused here. It doesn't look like it is. But he does have black spots on his scales. Those are called freckles. That's normal. Other morphs of snakes, they shouldn't have this unless they have banana in them. As far as I know, that's the only morph that has the freckles. So check their scales on top. They should be laying flat. If you see any redness, if you see any raising of any of them, if one looks higher than the other or a group of them looks higher than the other, check that, because it could be a sore or something like that. Check their belly. It should be white, uniform. There shouldn't really be anything on it, like I said, unless it's a different morph that could have some kind of marking on it, especially if you're getting a snake that's not from a breeder. Like I said, I recommend going to a breeder. it's not the end of the world. If you wanted to get a snake that was a rescue, maybe it could save you some money. If you're not looking at getting into breeding, rescuing a snake is a great idea. I rescued my boa, I rescued my first ball python, I've rescued a few ball pythons from other people that just couldn't take care of them anymore or didn't want them anymore. That's a great option for me because I think it's great to be able to take care of an animal that someone doesn't want anymore. So make sure you check their belly. If they have any dark spots, especially if it's a strip or brown like scarring, anything like that, make sure you ask about that. If it looks recent, stay away from that animal altogether. There's a thing called a thermal burn that a snake can get. If they have an under the tank heat mat, if it gets too hot, if there's not enough substrate and they're laying directly on this heat mat, it will burn their belly and it can kill them. If they have any stuck shed on their skin, that's not that big of a deal. If the person who has the snake is keeping their humidity high enough, that shouldn't really be an issue. But from time to time, snakes do have a bit of stuck shed on them, regardless of the humidity. Sometimes it just happens. If there's pieces all over them, that's bad. Stay away from that because that animal is really having a problem or not being taken care of properly, and there could be other things wrong with it. Also check their eyes. Their eyes should be bright, they should be full. If they're dented in at all, again, that's another sign of the humidity not being high enough. Low humidity for snakes, especially ball pythons and snakes that are from tropical regions, it can be deadly to them not having high enough humidity. One sign of not having a high enough humidity is their eyes will actually dent in. They will have creases in their eyes or flat spots like inverted domes in their eyes. It's kind of weird looking. Another reason to check their eyes is to make sure that they don't have eye caps stuck on. And again, this is something that you're going to want to look for if you're getting a snake second hand or a rescue. People don't know how to take care of them properly and things can happen. So their eye caps should come off every shed as one piece. Their shed should come off as one piece altogether. And their eye cap, you'll see it, it'll look just like a little eye. Sometimes when they shed, it doesn't come off, but a snake that has stuck eye caps, especially multiple ones, it'll look raised, it'll be cloudy. You'll be able to tell if there's stuck eye caps, especially if it's been going on for some time. Another question to ask the breeder is the weight and the age of the snake. If you're able to get that from them, hatch date. At the very least, the month and the year when the snake was hatched. That's so important because if you watched my last video, if you haven't watched it, go check it out. It's called Zuri's Story. I did have a snake pass away, unfortunately. The snake was underweight for its age. Go check that video out if you want to see that in more detail and hear about that. Ask the hatch date, at least the month and year, and the weight of the snake. The age and the weight of the snake is so important because I was sold a snake that was grossly underweight for the age she told me it was. If you're not sure what weight the snake should be, I'm going to actually make a video about that, but you can also find charts online that'll show you from this month to this month the snake should be about this weight. From this month to this year the snake should be about this weight. That is an awesome cheat sheet to have when you're going, especially if you're not very familiar with them or you're buying a snake for the first time. That's going to give you an idea if the snake is being fed enough, if they're being fed big enough prey items, if they're growing properly, and how healthy they really are. Also ask the person that you're getting them from what they've been eating, how often the snake eats, how often they try to feed them, if they eat every time, if they're picky, if they eat every other time. Really find out and dial in on that particular animal that you've picked. Make sure you understand their habits, how they have been operating for the last however long the person has had them. That's going to be important to know because it's going to set up your expectations of how the animal is going to be once you get it home. If the animal is eating, if they're telling you that the animal is eating every single week without fail, maybe they've missed once the whole time they've had them, you get the snake home, it doesn't eat the first week, that's normal. If it starts to not eat the week after that and the week after that, call the breeder back. That's another reason why it's great to have a good breeder that you're getting your snake from, because if something goes on with the snake, you can call them after you buy the snake, ask them questions, say, hey, this is happening, what would you recommend? They're going to be happy to help you make sure you're taking care of that animal properly. So it's important to have expectations set up about how the animal has been behaving while this person has it, so that when you get home, now you have a baseline of, okay, this is what this animal's used to, this is how they're used to their day going, their routine, this is how often they're being fed. You need to try to stick to that as much as possible. So once you've asked all those questions, you feel comfortable with the animal that you've chosen, you feel like it's healthy, you feel like you've picked a great breeder that's going to be in communication with you, that's going to be helpful to you. If you feel like you have any questions later on, they're not going to be angry at you for asking them again. Congratulations, you have now got your first snake or your first reptile, and you bring it home. So before you purchase the snake, and again, a good breeder is going to ask you these questions as well to make sure that you're completely prepared for the animal that you're bringing home, especially if this is your first one. They're going to ask you, what size tank do you have, or what size box do you have, or whatever you're going to be keeping your animal in. They're going to ask you what size it is. They're going to ask you if you have any food set up. They're going to ask you how many hides you have set up, if the animal needs hides, if the animal needs to climb. They should be asking you these things. If they don't, that's okay too. Some people don't feel like that's necessarily their responsibility. I would do that personally because, like I said, my animals are all my babies. I want to make sure they're well taken care of. Make sure you have the enclosure set up completely before you bring the animal home. You don't want them in a deli cup or in a bag for a day or two while you go out to PetSmart trying to gather everything and then trying to put it all together while they're in the bag like, well, what happened? So make sure you have it all set up before you get home. That way, when you get home, you can put them directly in there and then leave them alone. I would recommend leaving them alone for a week, maybe 2. Let them get acclimated to their new environment. It's kind of stressful for them. So let them get acclimated before you get them out and hold them, maybe before you feed them again. And that's pretty much it. Now you've got your new snake, you got your new reptile, and you can enjoy it for many years to come. Thanks for watching. If you love snakes, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be coming out with new videos every single week. If you got something you would like to see or a particular snake you'd like to see, any questions, comment it down below or send me a message. Follow me on Instagram. It's Kelsey's Corner Friends, and I will see y'all next time.